gatherings. We started to organize these online art during sessions in 2023 because we lived, and we still live, in a permanent state of global crisis where art professionals are being threatened in their art practice, some even in their lives. They work under immense pressure and are forced to migrate. We want to come together and reflect on how we can deal with this as a sector. How do we show solidarity for international art professionals and organizations in crisis? And how can we be hospitable and inclusive in our creative field to professionals that had to forcibly migrate? Can the art sector do something against these causes of global crisis? And what should we be sensitive about coming from the Western world? Today we gather with all of you to turn these reflections and exchanges of the past years into concrete actions. We chose not to focus on a specific region or a current crisis, because we are all overwhelmed by what's going on worldwide, from ecological disasters and political suppression to wars and genocides. Although each participant will speak from lived experiences in a certain region, this conference today is for all people that are being oppressed in every region affected by disasters and violence. Arts are a reflection of society. We are here today with all of you who feel a responsibility to speak up and act against these systems causing exploitation, discrimination, and violence against certain groups of people and our earth. We want to immensely thank everyone who gave us their trust in the past years and who has shared testimonials, good practices, and lived experiences. This day is a result of your critical input and necessary feedback. Thank you. We also want to thank Globa Roma and Fameus, two amazing organizations working in the field. Your contribution and collaboration are invaluable within Art During Crisis. Working on teams of crisis with people active in the field also means we need to be flexible and show understanding for last-minute changes. Unfortunately, one of our keynote speakers, Petna Ndaliko Katondolo, is not able to give his keynote today. We are happy that Magali from Africalia will give us some information on his work in Yole, Africa in Goma. And we will try to have his keynote recorded or written out so that we can share this online and with all of you on a later moment. Also, Tracy Gentles of SIG Festival will not be present here today during the radical rest session, that will still take place in the afternoon. Today we will start with 2 keynotes. After the keynotes, we will have a 10-minute break and continue with a panel discussion where local art professionals will discuss how this ongoing global crisis impacts our local art sector. What shift is necessary towards more collective international solidarity coming from our local art fields. After the lunch, we will continue with sessions where we will discuss concrete information, advice, and tips to take with you in your cultural or artistic work. This conference and the sessions in the afternoon are full. If you'd like to switch sessions, you can check at the reception if any places became available during lunch from 1 p.m. We will start with the sessions in the afternoon on sustainable artist careers, on visa possibilities for art professionals who had to forcibly migrate and that are here in asylum or on temporary visa. And the third session will be the first part on international solidarity. After a 15-minute break, the second part of the afternoon will take place on boycott initiatives in and outside the art sector and a session on radical rest. There will also be a second part on international solidarity where we will continue on the findings of the first part. I also want to inform you on an extra session taking place in the second part of the afternoon. Globa Roma and Fameus, 2 organizations who both work with artists that had to forcibly migrate or recently migrated here, will form an alliance and open up the conversation about the needs and support requests of these artists they work with. They each want to work towards developing practices of research and response to these accumulated questions in a format tailored to their respective target groups. They would like to limit this conversation with people in the arts and cultural field who really relate to this topic. So if any of you is interested to participate in this extra session, you can register during the break or lunch at the reception desks. Sorry, by the way, everybody, for the elevator that's not working and the stairs that you have to take. After today, Flanders Arts Institute will keep following up on today's discussions and call to actions. We will also keep exchanging during our monthly Art During Crisis online sessions, which take place every first Thursday of the month from 1 to 2 p.m. The next session will be the 7th of May on the Sapmi region, where the last recognized indigenous people of Europe live. We are grateful to have you all present here today, including also those following online. And we will hope you join us in this ongoing work. United, we can work towards real change. I want to thank you all from the whole team of Flanders Arts Institute and Globa Roma, and wish you an inspiring day. I would like to introduce now the first keynote speaker, David of Fossil Free Culture Netherlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Femke. Yesterday, during dinner, I promised that I wasn't going to ask you, how are you? But I'm going to do. And I do not ask this question as a polite question. I ask it because last night during dinner, with some of you, this question kept returning in different ways. How are you doing? How are we doing? How do we answer this question when we work with people, places, and realities that are under pressure? How do we answer this question when people, places, and realities are under pressure? This is a very difficult question because the expected answer is usually very simple. I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm managing, I'm coping, I'm surviving. But maybe some of us are not fine. Maybe some of us are just functioning. Maybe some of us are caring too much. Maybe some of us are trying to remain available to others, while also feeling that our own inner resources are becoming thinner. So I want to begin here, not with a theory, not yet with a concept, but with this difficulty. How are we doing when art is asked to respond to crisis? I'm now going to share a few thoughts of mine as a Brazilian art educator, but also from other Brazilian authors, poets, activists, and artists. To speak first at a conference called Art During Crisis, From Reflection to Action, is not only to introduce a topic, it is to set a tone. And quite an impossible task, being the first keynote speaker. And I'm shy. Clarity, but not simplification. Solidarity, but not innocence. Because art during crisis is a beautiful phrase, but it's also a dangerous one. It can open an urgent conversation, but it can also become too broad, too elegant, too easy to agree with. War is crisis, forced migration is crisis, genocide is crisis, climate collapse is crisis, censorship is crisis, poverty is crisis, racism is crisis, loneliness is crisis. The destruction of a cultural infrastructure is crisis, the exhaustion of artists is crisis, and yes, all of this is true. But if everything is crisis, we need to ask more precise questions. Crisis for whom? Crisis according to whose timeline? Crisis as interruption or crisis as structure? For many people, crisis is not an event. It's not something that suddenly arrives. It is the condition under which life has been organized for a long time. So perhaps the question is not only what can art do during crisis? Perhaps the question is also what has been called normal, and for whom was that normality already a crisis? This is important because institutions often speak of crisis as if something went wrong recently, as if the world was functioning, and then came the war, and then came the pandemic, and then came the climate disaster, and then came authoritarianism, and then came forced displacement, then came the cuts to culture, then came burnout. But from many places in the world, this story sounds false. Colonialism was not a past crisis. Extractivism is not a side effect. Racism is not a malfunction. Forced displacement is not an accident. The abandonment of some bodies, some territories, some languages, and some memories is not a tragic exception. It is often how the system has been organized. So when we say from reflection to action, I think we need to be careful, because action can reproduce the system, the same violence, with a better language. And reflection can be a form of action if it interrupts them, if it interrupts harm. Maybe the question is not how do we move quickly from reflection to action. Maybe the question is how do we act without repeating the same structures that reproduced the crisis. This is also where I come from in relation to Disobedient Art School from Fossil-Free Culture, where I collaborate as an art educator in Amsterdam. I was invited here partially from that context, and partially from the context with the work we do with experiencing art and producing subjectivities along the Amazon River through the project Tecnobarca, that I am very passionate and happy to talk about along the day with whoever is interested. But here I want to come back to Disobedient Art School from Fossil-Free Culture, Netherlands. And for me, Disobedient Art School is not it's not simply about using art to protest. It's not only about art and activism. It's not only about making visible what is wrong. It's also about asking, what are we obeying without noticing? What are we obeying in our institutions, in our funding structures, in our cultural habits, in our ideas of professionalism, in our need to produce outcomes, in our ways of inviting people, in our ways of extracting stories, in our ways of turning suffering into content. Disobedience, in this sense, is not only an aesthetic, it is an ethical practice. It asks us to disobey the demand to continue as normal, to disobey the idea that the program must continue at any cost, to disobey the expectation that communities in pain must provide material for artistic transformation, to disobey the romantic image of the resilient artist, to disobey the culture system when it says, please bring your wound and make it communicable, fundable, and beautiful. This brings me to naming one of the dangers of art during crisis, the danger of romanticizing struggle. We often hear sentences like, we learn from crisis, crisis teaches us, suffering makes us stronger, art transforms pain. And yes, sometimes crisis reveals things. It reveals who shows up, it reveals what breaks, how fragile our institutions are. It reveals how much invisible care, work, was already being done. It reveals who is protected and who is abandoned. But I want to resist the comfort hidden inside the idea that suffering teaches. Because suffering does not automatically teach. Because suffering destroys, it isolates, it humiliates, It steals language, it steals trust. Sometimes it steals the body's capacity to imagine a future. And if we say too quickly that suffering teaches, we may turn the pain of others into pedagogical resources for ourselves. That is extraction, not extraction from land, oil, or minerals, but extraction from wounds, extraction from trauma, from people's biographies, extraction from the pain of those who are already carrying too much. And the arts are not innocent in this. We know how easily suffering can become a project, a performance, a panel, a grant application, a residency theme, an image, a moving testimony, a program note. A beautiful moment of awareness for those who can afford to leave the room afterwards. So I want to ask, who has been asked to suffer publicly so that others may feel transformed? Who has been asked to tell the story again and again and again? Who has been asked to be resilient? Who is allowed to be angry? Who is allowed to be tired? Who is allowed to refuse? Who is allowed to be more than their crisis? In this context, I'd like to share perspective in our praxis from the theater of the oppressed. Theater of the oppressed, developed by Augusto Boal, is often understood as a methodological method for participation, dialogue, and social change. But for me, one of its deepest contributions is that it asks us to locate ourselves in relation to the oppression. Where am I in this situation? I am the person directly experiencing this oppression. Am I connected to it through a similar struggle, or am I someone whose task is to stand in solidarity, even if this is not my struggle? This has been developed and deepened by many theater of the oppressed practitioners, including Bárbara Santos, whose work has been crucial for feminism, anti-racist, and collective practices of the theater of the oppressed. We think of at least 3 ways of relating to crisis and oppression. The first one is by identity. This means this is my struggle. I am directly implicated. I am speaking from a lived position within this oppression. The second is by analogy. This means this is not exactly my struggle, but I recognize something through another struggle. This is a resonance. This is a structural similarity. This is a bridge. But the bridge does not erase the difference. So we have identification, analogy, and the third one is solidarity. This means this is not my struggle. I may not even be similar. It may not be even similar to my struggle, but I stand with those who are living it. I do not need to be the center. I do not need to identify. I do not need to appropriate. I do not need to say, I understand exactly what you feel. Maybe I do not. Maybe I cannot. But I can still act, listen, redistribute resources, take risks, refuse complicity, ask what is needed, stand beside. And I think this is crucial for many of us working in European art and cultural contexts. Because not every crisis is ours by identity, not every wound is ours to narrate, not every struggle is ours to represent, but many struggles demand our solidarity, and solidarity is not a sentiment. It is not simply feeling bad. It's not posting the correct sentence. It is not programming someone from elsewhere. It is not inviting a displaced artist and calling that justice. Solidarity is structural. It asks, who gets paid? Who gets protected? Who gets time? Who carries the risk? Who has to translate themselves? Who owns the narrative? Who controls the conditions? Who decides what counts as art? Who decides what counts as knowledge? Who decides when the crisis begins and when it is over? And here I want to introduce some reflections of Ailton Krenak. Krenak is an indigenous Brazilian thinker, writer, environmental activist, and one of the most important voices today for rethinking life, economy, land, time, and future. I bring Krenak here not because he gives us a method, not because he gives us a toolkit, but because he interrupts the grammar of the problem. And sometimes interruption is more important than the solution. Krenak is especially important when we talk about crisis because he refuses the idea that suffering is automatically meaningful. In one of his reflections, he rejects the idea that pain is a teacher. He says, in essence, I do not want to learn anything at the cost of suffering. This is a powerful sentence for a gathering about art and crisis. Because much of the culture sector is organized around the idea that crisis produces learning, that suffering produces awareness, that pain produces transformation. But Krenak asks us to slow down. He does not deny that people create knowledge under terrible conditions. Of course they do. Oppressed communities have always created knowledge, strategies, songs, cosmologies, rituals, theater, images, ways of caring, ways of surviving, ways of laughing, ways of refusing. But that does not mean suffering is good. It means people are extraordinary despite the violence imposed to them. There is a difference between honoring knowledge born in a struggle and romanticizing the struggle that made such knowledge necessary. This distinction matters deeply for art, because if we are not careful, we may celebrate resilience while leaving intact the machinery that demands resilience. We may celebrate survival while failing to ask why survival has become the horizon. We may celebrate communities for enduring what they should never have been forced to endure. Krenak also says something very simple and devastating about the economy. He reminds us that the economy is a human invention. And I like this image of crisis as a ship, that in order to keep the economy running, we need to throw people overboard. Then something is profoundly wrong. The ship has lost its meaning. The image is very important to me. The ship keeps moving. The engines keep running. The lights stay on. The program continues. The calls are published. The deadlines remain. The reports are written. The markets reopen. The institutions say we must continue. But people are being thrown overboard. And the question is, what is the value of keeping the ship moving if the people are disposable? This is not only an economic question, this is also a cultural question. What happens when the arts sector behaves like the ship? When we say, yes, there's a war, but the program must continue. Yes, artists are displaced, but the deadline continues. Yes, people are grieving, but we need an output. Yes, people are exhausted, but the production calendar cannot move. Yes, the world is burning, but visibility must be maintained. Then art becomes the ship, and maybe our task is not to decorate the ship. Maybe our task is to ask why we are still obeying its direction. So perhaps today, the question is not, cannot respond to crisis, because of course it can. It always has. The more difficult question is, how can art respond to crisis without consuming itself? Can art act without extracting, without controlling, without appropriating? Can art refuse the old normality instead of keeping us returning to it? Because returning to normal is not always healing. Returning to normality is what produced the collapse. So I want to propose something modest, but demanding. Let us not treat crisis as material. Let us not treat solidarity as emotion. Let us not treat action as speed. Let us not treat reflection as delay. Let us not treat peace as an innocent word, because peace can also be violent when it asks the wounded to be quiet. Peace can be violent if it arrives as a performance after the damage has already been done. Peace can be violent when it asks people to march beside the same forces that harmed them. Peace can be violent when it says, calm down, be reasonable, be grateful, be constructive, be resilient, move on. And this is why I want to end not with my own words, but with a text by the Brazilian writer Marcelino Freire. I am not of peace. I am really not. I am not. Peace is a rich thing. I am not going to wear that t-shirt. No, sir. I'm not going to release a dove. No, sir. Do not ask me to cry anymore. I'm all dried up. Peace is a disgrace. A disgrace. You carrying that rose, so silly in your hand. It makes no sense. I will not do it. I will not make that face, that blasé face. I will not pray. I will not go to the square, into that crowd. Peace does not solve anything. Peace marches on. But where is it going? Peace looks beautiful on television. Did you see that actor? You go if you want, but I'm not going. Shed a tear. Peace is very organized, very straight. Poor thing. Peace has an appointment. Look at the governor. The governor came. The mayor, the senator, even the football player came. I will not go. I will not go. Peace is a waste of time. And I have many things to do today. I have to cook rice and beans. I have beans and rice. And I have sewing to do. My judgment is not good. Peace makes me sick. You know how it is, right? I'm not in the mood. I'm really sorry. I apologize. But peace will not ruin my Sunday. Peace never comes here. Here in the favela. Have you noticed? It stays over there. Look, a bunch of people. In that demented queue, peace is very boring. Peace sucks. It does not even stink. It does not have a smell. Peace is childish. There's one thing I do not like, hope. Peace is false. Peace is that rich lady that never looked me in the face. You know, madam, peace does not live in my cleaning job. Peace is very white. Peace is pale. Peace needs blood. I already said it. I do not want it. I'm not going to any walk, no march. I do not want to go out. I'm not moving, not even dead. If peace comes knocking at my door, I'll not open. I'll not let it in. Peace is forbidden. Peace only appears at times like this. Peace is the new war on the news. Did you see the new war on the news? Now the city organizes itself to save whose skin? Not mine. Pray in this hell, I already pray. Amen. I'm not going to accompany anyone's march. I will not go. Do you know something? Let them go to hell. Yes, let them walk all afternoon because I'm tired. I have no patience anymore. I do not. Peace seems to be laughing at me. Have you noticed? All those rosaries with that nerve, with grinding teeth, have you noticed? What else do you want me to do? What? Who will resurrect my brother? Joaquin. I'll not take the man's photograph to be displayed down there. I will not carry my wound down the avenue. I will not march, especially not beside the police. Every time I see Joaquin's photograph, it hurts. There is longing, you know, the pain in the eye, in the chest, without end, the pain, 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 pain. I want to go out screaming, shouting, I want to shoot, I swear. Jesus, I feel like killing everyone, and if I did, you can be sure, peace would be to blame. You know what? Don't you? Peace does not allow me to do that, so I won't. I am deeply grateful to be here. Enjoy today's event and take care of ourselves and each other, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. I would like to ask our second keynote speaker, Sarah, to come on stage, please. Thank you.
Sorry, my conference shoes make sound. Good morning, everyone. Do you hear me well? Do I need to put this? Okay, so thank you so much for being here this morning with me and with everyone. I am very pleased to share the space with you. For those who are meeting me for the first time, my name is Sarah Abu Ghazal, and I am going to be speaking from 3 hats. The first hat is that I have been an organizer with feminist movements and women human rights defenders that also have art practices in South Asia and North Africa for the past 18 years. The second hat is that I'm also a fiction writer that recently migrated to Brussels, to Belgium, and I do work around bridging literary bridges between Belgium and the Swana region. And my third hat, which is an interesting hat as well, is that I work also with alliances of funders, especially in progressive philanthropy. So my contribution today, my questions to you all is coming from these 3 positions, but also as a way to help us go through the day while thinking, agreeing, disagreeing. I want to talk about 3 main positions or points around polycrisis, art continuity, and also solidarity as a call to action. I want to talk about these 3 points because of my 3 positions, but because also the 3 points of polycrisis, art continuity, and art practices and solidarity are connected by one main question for me. And the question is, how do we continue to support artists and ensure the continuity of art practices in a time defined by crisis and also changes, severe changes? So I want to start first by thinking that we often, and many of us has been using the term polycrisis a lot. I even used it in my title, so we use it a lot because also there is a need to say that we have been dealing with an increased frequency of crises that are happening globally. They are so frequent that they are so increased that they are somehow connected globally. But actually, if we really think about it, especially for the global majority, especially for places that I come from, many of us, I think, in the room comes from, these crises, or the frequency and the increase and the severity, is actually quite normal, and they are because of colonialization, post-colonization, and war. So perhaps why we are calling it now in Europe polycrisis, in the Western world polycrisis, is also because perhaps the effect and the impact and the challenges that these crises are bringing to our reality are becoming so clear that also here in Europe we cannot shield from, we cannot pretend that they're not affecting us anymore or implicating us or entangling us in a bigger ethical question. So what I would want us to think about is that maybe it's good to pause on this term today as a first step to say, why do we need to use a language that is abstract, that also obscures responsibility and accountability when we talk about crisis? We talk about polycrisis as if it's like a natural, complicated, abstract something, while actually, when we talk and when we think about these polycrises, things are clear, no? We know who is causing them. We know who's benefiting from them, we know who's paying the price, and we certainly know for sure how we are all differently impacted by them. So it's very important for me to first pause on this, think around this. So in a nicer term, my invitation today first is to really move away from language that obscures responsibility and instead begins to name the systems and actors that are behind these crises. And that's why now I move to think about Europe and also to think with and invite art and cultural institutions in Belgium here and beyond to think around this, around art during crisis. I know that many art and cultural institutions in Europe do think of themselves as a space of support for artists. And I think they are, really. They host artists, they provide funds, they create visibility, and this matters. I'm not saying this is not important, I'm saying this is very important. But also I think art institutions and art and cultural institutions in Belgium sometimes also forget to acknowledge a very important contradiction, is that while art from and during a crisis is being supported programmatically or with money or with resources, the structures that are producing these crises are often left unchallenged, unspoken about, undealt with. And this is a contradiction that I think often plays a very important role later on as we think about strategies in terms of responding and support. So in that sense, when we often become and do supportive things without thinking about the contradiction and our implicity in the bigger crisis, who created these wars, who made the machines to kill them, who enabled a genocide, when we don't think about these impacts, these like implicity, what happens is that we kind of risk our solidarity becoming more symbolic, no? It's more of a support without really challenging the structural barriers or the structure that allows the crisis or the violence or the problem to happen in the first place. So I want to slow down a little bit then before saying, okay, if this is the problem, here's the solution, this is what you need to do. Because first, before we jump to solutions or actions, I really, really think that we have to think about a step that is often missing as we think about crisis support or crisis response or being supportive, and that we often miss to ask ourselves a very important question, which is, what is our implication in the systems that we are responding to? We cannot respond and support artists surviving a genocide without also thinking, how are we implicated in the genocide itself? How have we enabled it as citizens, as curators, as programmers? Because that's also important. It cannot be, solidarity is not one directional, it's quite interconnected. Because I think solidarity without this reflection can become a way to feel that we are feeling ethical, but we're not really changing the conditions that requires the solidarity in the first place. So it'd be like, oh, okay, come have a show at this art space of mine, but I will not do my homework as a citizen and as a receiver of public fund to also question the implicity, the cycle. So then for me, and this is my also second invitation to you, is that to think about solidarity not as an ethical gesture. It's not something we do out of from ethics that are not connected to reality. It's actually is a political position that needs to be translated into an action. It cannot just be a feeling. And I think already David kind of really filled us all on how we, I think, are inviting you to think of it. And what do I say solidarity is an action, but it needs to come from a reflection of around implicity and ethics. Because we think here in Europe that the violence that we witness outside our borders has nothing really to do with us. We think that we don't really acknowledge that violence is interconnected. We don't really acknowledge that repression is interconnected. And we also think that, okay, so maybe artistic freedom can vary from one context to another, right? But then, you know, when we look at artists, especially here in Belgium and Europe, being silenced because of their work and their voices around Palestine, or even in some instances, Sudanese artists questioning the United Arab Emirates money involving art or washing, we think it's separate from us, but it's not really separate from us, no? It's basically what we allow to happen outside our borders actually allows Europe to also experience or think about what can be possible in terms of silencing. So if I can silence masses outside my border, probably it means also it will be possible for me to silence my own citizens and my own localities in Europe. So for me, then the question is around crisis and supporting artists and curation and artwork during crises. It cannot be from a distance of like, how can we support artists? But actually, it also needs to be, what are we willing to change within our institutions, around our artistic ecosystem, around our infrastructures, to allow more inclusion and more participation of artists and of alignment between ethics and politics. So this is where now I want to move to like practicalities. And by practicalities, I really don't mean just let's open a new program for 6 people to receive emergency funding because of their crisis. What I actually mean is that it is maybe time in terms of our action to also, in terms of being practical, that we need to align between what we say politically and really people, art institutions, cultural institutions in Belgium sometimes have excellent narrative, you know, they're like quite political, they're quite charged, they're quite on point. But then this needs to really always align with what also the institution does. So this is very important. Practicalities, response, programming, call it whatever you want. It cannot happen without this alignment, action, first thinking. So it's very important to have an alignment and to bridge this gap that I see in a lot of institutions between what is the discourse and what's the practice, but also what are the values that you carry as an institution and what is your structures, you know? Are they accessible? Are they democratic? They allow participation from artists in decision making? So in a sense, practically speaking, perhaps this is an invitation to rethink temporary programs that support temporary residencies for temporary artists. Maybe we should think about this poly-crisis or the bigger crisis that we're all facing as something that is long-term, and then thinking around it, programming with it, creating funds, grants with it, should be actually long-term. Second, I think we need to address some of the structural barriers, and I think also David talked about it a little bit. What are the structural barriers that are existing within art and cultural institutions in Belgium, Europe, and beyond? In terms of artists continuing their practices, but also voicing out their work, but in a way for artists to continue having their artistic freedom, so to speak. So it's very important to also do the hard work, because I know a lot of institutions avoid bringing artists from beyond the border because they don't want to deal with visas, they don't want to deal with paperwork, legalizing, changing status. And also that's quite impactful for the art ecosystem, especially in terms of artists that are not Belgian, because it also allows other artists that have been living here and that are not Belgian to be tokenized. And I think that's another issue and another problem we have to think about. Another thing also we need to, I think third, we need to confront some of the extractive dynamics that art institutions and cultural institutions also have here, which is basically asking artists, especially coming from changed contexts or severe contexts, of severe change contexts, to only produce art relating to the crisis. That's quite, I think, extractive and also not really a best practice. But also, this extractive dynamic also forces artists to present their suffering in a way that fits an institutional framework, which is, I feel, quite violent and also quite limiting, you know. So in that sense, my invitation in terms of practicality, changing structurally within the art and cultural institution needs to find ways to support artists by allowing them to exist beyond survival, no? So that support is coming for the practice itself. However this practice is, so if it is to produce art in the end or just to sustain the practice itself, it's really, really important. There is a feeling of transaction, no? Transactionally support. We give you money, you give us a show. We give you money, you give us a performance. And sometimes, especially for artists that don't have much access to resources and support, so in that sense, it really interferes with the artistic process itself, but also of this relationship between the institution and the artist. And finally, my last invitation to you all is to think about the difference between inclusion and participation. There's a lot of talk about including newcomers, asylum seekers, artists with different backgrounds, with different, with diverse talents. But I think also there are less presence of artists that can participate in making decisions on a curation level, on a programming level, on a strategic level, I think. And in a way, there is less participation of artists, especially politicized ones, those who are coming from contexts, I don't want to say politicized, I want to say changed contexts, like severe contexts, war context, to also influence the bigger narrative of the cultural work. So then crisis then becomes very pocketed and very limited, while the bigger narrative of art remains unchanged and unchallenged. And I think that's, for me, a problem, because it feels then art is really experiencing a reality that none of us are quite experiencing. So this is very important for me as an invitation. So, and the last thing, and I've had a lot of discussions around this with other groups and artists and curators who live in Belgium and beyond and do this type of work. I think many of us has been really, really impressed by the call and the statement to boycott and divest from Israel that many, I would say hundreds of Belgian and institutions from the Netherlands have signed. And it's great, right? It's great on a narrative level, on a political resistance level, but I think what is missing actually, because of the incidents and because of the different stories that we've been hearing, is that I don't think art and cultural institutions have been thinking around also setting up protection mechanisms that actually, in fact, on the ground, realistically protects artists and institutions who have been practically joining the call to divest and boycott. So we've been hearing about a lot of defunding, threatening to defund, around a lot of retaliation and punishment to individuals within institutions that have also voiced out a desire to engage with the boycott and invest, or actually just to voice out concerns regarding the genocide, which is by international law is, being treated as a genocide. So this is very important that the political statements and the call to actions are also setting up mechanisms in which it allows people, when they voice out these, when they respond to the statement, that they feel protected, or else I think we're also throwing artists, curators, institutions into the fire. So this is very important, and we've had some discussions around it with few of the groups that are active here. I also think that there needs to be, I would like to see more collective action and collective strategizing in terms of institutions around the horrible cuts from the government to the art sector. It's not something that I think we should passively accept. Especially in times like these, I would like to see more action in terms of people finding ways to address this without without accepting it, because I noticed, and some of us noticed, that people were like, okay, we're being cut, okay, it's dommage, you know, we'll, I guess, work part-time. So it's also good to see more proactive kind of engagement with the current government around defunding, because it's really, really important that we treat public funds and funds in general and resourcing as an essential conditions in these times to have artistic freedom and not have institutions be cut and then relying on other types of funding that can be fragile and quite limiting in terms of what they can do. So in that sense, it's really, really important to think of it and to organize collectively for the whole budget cuts issue. I think I've asked a lot of you, I wanted you a lot of consideration. The last thing I wanted to say is that I will leave you with one question, and I hope that it gets reflected on throughout the day and throughout the smaller discussions, which is, if we are really wanting to engage with solidarity as a call to action that requires some self-reflection, some strategizing, some reckoning with the newest and the new reality that we are living with, it's really, really important for me to ask you to reflect on this question. What kind of systems, your solidarity, the solidarity that you want to do, what kind of systems it sustains? Is it a solidarity that sustains the current status quo of institutions, or it's actually a solidarity that wants to maybe sustain a different system that is more aligned, that is more fair, but also that is more aware that the crisis, also the face of the crisis, people see it in Lebanon and Gaza as a genocide, militarized, but we need to start understanding that the other face of this crisis is the rise of fascism and radical right-wing. So we're not so protected. So in that sense, if we are designing now the solidarity action that we want to do, what is it sustaining and how to actually create that? So I want to thank you so much for listening to me give the longest talk I've done in my life. And I hope to meet some of you, most of you, all of you throughout the day. Thank you, FIMKE and Global Roma, and yes, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. As I said, unfortunately, we cannot bring the keynote of Petna at the moment, but we are very grateful that Magali of Africalia will come have a short explanation on the work of Petna in Yola Africa, in Goma, Congo, and how they collaborate with him. Thank you, Magali.
Thank you and good morning, everybody. So I'm Magali from Africalia. Just to introduce us very briefly, we're an organization based here in Brussels, and we work in international cooperation with a focus in the cultural sector. So we have in our main program, we're working in 6 countries: Belgium, Burundi, DRC, Uganda, Kenya, and Burkina Faso. And so in DRC, we're working together with Yola Africa, of which Petna is the president and the founder of. We've been working together for a few years already. We're helping them with their governance, their inside governance. We helping them with their to make better creations, also with distribution of their work. They're mainly working within cinematography. And so, as Femke said, they're based in Goma, which is a region that has been a war zone for the last 30 years. And so they're also a center for artistic creation and cultural exchange, whose mission is mainly to work with youth and to encourage social invention through their arts. So yeah.
Thank you, Magali, for doing this last minute. We're going to have a short break. Let's say, I have no idea how late it is. I forgot to watch my phone before I came on stage. 11 uur. Let's gather again at 15 minutes after 11 for the next part, which will be the panel discussion on the local art sector. Thank you. Hello. Hello, everybody. Ooh, sorry. We're gonna start with the second part of today. So we're gonna start with the second part for today, the panel discussion. Voila, I see all speakers are on stage. I'm gonna look at Amma. Are you ready? Okay.
A warm welcome, everyone.
Hello.
It's cold, right?
I'm a bit cold. Should I?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Just be yourself.
Okay.
So, good afternoon, I think, or is it still morning? It doesn't matter. Hello, a warm welcome, everyone. I am Amma Korantinkumi, and it's a pleasure to be the moderator of this very interesting lineup. The aim of this panel discussion is to zoom a little bit more into our local arts sector, and of course to discuss the impact of crisis on the arts. And we are doing this with you all, so a warm welcome to you all. You are so all far from me. So with Anne, with Magali, with Gerardo, and with Gael. And what works much better is I would like to invite you to introduce yourself, so who you are, what you do, briefly, and then the audience will get to know you in that way. Anne, I would like to start with you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anne van der Meulen, and I work for Globaroma at the moment. And Globaroma, if I need to describe it, it's an organization, an arts organization that started 25 years ago, specifically in order to support artists on the move or in forced displacement. And I think if I need to paraphrase why back in the days the founders founded Globaroma, was because they were looking at the arts field and were wondering for whom is this arts field and how, what is the role or the position or the access for artists in forced displacement. And since then, the organization is working on creating conditions for artists in displacement to continue working.
Thank you.
Yes, hi. So I'm Magali again from Africalia. Again, we're an organization based here in Brussels. We're working in international cooperation with a focus on culture, and mainly in Belgium and in sub-Saharan Africa.
Well, you have a fun, Gail.
Hello, my name is Gerardo Salinas. I'm dramaturg, a member of the artistic direction team of the KVS. This theater is a Royal City Theater of Brussels. It's an institution with 170 years history, and we are in the artistic direction for 10 years now. And we try to occupy, to have the dignity to become the company of such a city as Brussels with 180 nationalities. We try to be very flexible and diverse. We are doing our best. And I think that I'm here also from another perspective, because we have also a platform, Festival Próximamente. It's a collaboration between artists and cultural workers from Latin America and its diaspora. I will tell you later more about it.
Hello, my name is Gael Khalife. I am part of Tashattut Collective. Tashattut is a collective that supports and connects artists coming from the Swana region who currently reside in Europe, but mainly in Belgium. My colleagues Rami and Sherbel join me there from the crowd. We come from Lebanon. We moved to Belgium around 4 or 5 years ago, and we felt that we need some sort of community and a platform perhaps to connect people together, so that because we all belong to the cultural sector, we wanted to have some support for us and for other people in our shoes. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're all sitting here today as cultural professionals in the arts sector, and I can imagine that there's a certain specificity to your work in the context you work with, the artists you work with, the way your organization is structured. So those are the interesting topics I would like to delve into. Perhaps, Anne, we can start with you again. What impact does the context of your work have? So, or the context of the artists that you work with have on your work within the organization? Perhaps you could make it a bit lively by giving us a few examples, and I'll come to all of you so you have some time to think about examples.
I'm gonna try to give a lively, but maybe the context, because we're in this context of art during crisis, and I think in what came through the both keynotes that we listened to is that the crisis is not per se an exception, but something that is here for a very long time, like border violence, housing precarity, war, ecological collapse. These are like continuous interruption. It's not an interruption, it's actually a continuous context in which the artists we work with are continuously dealing. So of course it impacts the artistic practice, the artistic continuity, and that's why how we try to create conditions that this continuity can exist. So for us it's not an exception or something that comes on top of this crisis. And for instance, to give an example, when an artist comes to Global Roma, the artist faces probably is working with lawyers for their administrative procedure, or has troubles finding housing on a housing market, or also is looking for a place to find school for their kids. So there is a lot of context that comes with it, and we try to to make space for this kind of context, sometimes by collaborating with other organizations, also by trying to understand what are the obstacles precisely.
Yeah, understand. Gail,
yes.
Would you like to also answer that?
Tashattut, so the question was the impact of Tashattut's work. Exactly. So Tashattut, mainly how we started was, we got, I don't know if I should go into that deep, but we started as, we got a grant, a small fund from Kiosk in Kask in Ghent, the gallery. So we were able to start to do an exhibition, and we did an exhibition for 13 different Arab artists living in Europe. And so this was the start of sort of the structure of how Tashattut functions. We get an opportunity from an institution, and we're able to connect the artist with the institution and support the artist in this sense. I would say that throughout the years, because we started in June 2022, we were able to gather community in public events. We were able to give artists a platform to showcase their works that not necessarily focus on being displaced or being from the region. And I also wrote another note. And bringing artists together, because if I can share an example, we organized a music residency with Global Roma and with Ancienne Belgique, and in this music residency we were able to invite 3 different artists who did not know each other previously, and they got to work together and then perform at Ancienne Belgique for a crowd. So it's sort of like supporting the artists, bringing the artists together, bringing the artists with the community together, and finally being able to financially remunerate the artists for their works through the institutional funding. Thank you.
But Gerardo, you were just speaking about the festival, so perhaps also in the context of the festival that you organize and your institution, but KVS here, what do you see as the impact, but also at the same time by the obstacles?
Yeah, the first thing is we are the Flemish City Theatre from Brussels. The idea behind Royal City Theatre for the Flemish community is to produce theatre, and you have to think in the idea about what is Flanders and what are we producing. The first challenge for us was to redefine Flanders. For us, I'm the dramaturg of one of the biggest companies in Flanders, and I'm an immigrant. This my Flemish have a very sexy Spanish accent. It's a way to redefine Flanders. Flanders in Brussels have to be multilingual, open, welcome. It's an anthem to communicate with the world and to bring this information to the other cities and spots in Flanders. It's a way that we see the KVS, this company. We are producing. We produce multilingual. And the second one is not only that, because I'm coming from the human rights movement in Latin America, and I'm very conscious about the opportunity to occupy this position in such a tool. Thus we are trying to share this position and to create associations. One of these associations is Proximamente, this idea to create this platform. Okay, you have to convince your board that you are creating a platform working together with 8 Latin American countries in a kind of equal relationship, and with another organizations in Brussels or in Europe. That is a big challenge. I was listening to Sarah. Hey, Sarah, I say your name. No, very good, very good keynote. But she said, okay, we have to fight against the cuts and the government and everything. And it's all the time, it's a very specific way to fight. Maybe it's not visible outside, but we are fighting all the time.
I would like to get into that a bit later, but keep that thought.
Yes, we are fighting all the time, we are changing, moving, and in the way with Proximamente, the aim is we are an elephant. I say always because we are a big institution, European institution with funding, and we are trying to build a horizontal relationship with some big institutions in Latin America, some little institution. It's not easy to be aware of your impact. I use always the image that we are an elephant trying to caress an ant. Oh, beautiful, plus. And because, hey, Angela, because of that, we have to work together to give a space not only to artists, to little organizations. I think that it's important to be aware that it's not only the relationship between organizations and artists, it's also in between their ecosystem. This is very important for us, for this.
Thank you. Magali, Gail, I see your eyes, Magali, I see your eyes but lighten up with that. So you agree. What is the impact, do you think, of your organization?
Yes.
And perhaps also the obstacles?
The obstacles are many.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There are many. As I was saying, so we're an organization working, first of all, not with we have a focus on the cultural sector, but we're working in international cooperation. That's really important to understand that. So we're working in our main program, which is a 5-year program. We're working mainly in 5 countries in sub-Saharan Africa in fragile contexts. So it's in Burundi, where there is a fuel shortage since years before the war started in Iran, in DRC, where there's security and political tensions since 30 years, in Burkina Faso, where there's terrorism, in Kenya and in Uganda, where governments are enforcing law against LGBTQI+ communities. So there are a lot of obstacles. So what we try to do, we work with cultural institutions, which can be cultural spaces, theaters, youth centers focusing on culture, and we're supporting them so they can carry out their activities. We are also setting up programs for cultural and creative entrepreneurs, and we really try to make of them, all of them. So all the cultural actors, we really try to make of them resilient actors. And so what we do actually against the polycrisis is continue to work in these difficult situations on the field.
Yeah. Well, what I think is so what strikes me about all of you is that you are all coming from different positions, and you, as an artistic director for artists that have fled, you working like with on the international spectrum. You working within a big cultural, public funded but organization. I think you also of being someone who has set up your own but collective and being funded. So what I also thought was very interesting about the first speaker and the second speaker is that they both addressed the power dynamics, and but within this context. So I just wanted to know, each of you from your own hat, what is the sensitivity within your organization or within your context that you have of this? What do you encounter? What are your own thoughts on this? Gerardo, I would like to start with you.
Yes, I have to say that there is in the organization a big awareness of all layers, and it's a very flexible organization. And before the Cabeza, I was working for 15 years in another theater, and I see that technicians, administration, everybody is ready to help. We have a lot of problem with visas, for example. We try to look for creative solutions to make tours possible, and in the context of Proximamente and outside. I'm very thankful of this tool, Cabeza, and in the way that we are through different crises from the Western Brussels perspective as a COVID to see that we are trying to move to be flexible. And the flexibility is something that I think is very important, but at the same time, the other side that I told you, the invisible fights, that is sometimes not easy to communicate because you can say nothing about that, to the grassroots movement and everybody, like that you are doing nothing, but it's to be there, to put your body in this position, to hold the space. It's a privilege to be here, but it's also it's not easy to hold the space.
Yeah, Magali, I can resonating, but to this, putting your body in a space that's often, as we know, a dominant white space, not a safe space, a racist space. I can imagine Africalia also with their specificity as an organization and their history as an organization. How is that? Is there room for reflection on this power dynamics within Africalia, and how do you navigate between you as a person personally and the organization? Could you just take us along?
Do you mean how I am versus Africalia, or as me as an employee from Africalia versus
both.
The cultural
so
organizations?
I just would like to know if there is reflection, but on this within your organization.
Okay.
And also perhaps there's a difference in how you think about it and your role within the organization.
We're one of the very few organizations in international cooperation, Belgian international cooperation, which is managed by a black woman. So that's already, it makes it a little bit easier. We're more aware, there's more space for reflection, for dialogue, for discussions, for introspection. But you still have this power dynamic because you're the one with you're the organization with the money, and you give the money to the partner organization in Sub-Saharan Africa, so we're well aware. But for us, for us, equal partnerships, it's not just a buzzword, it's really something we put in practice every day. Our partners are the experts. I'm never going to tell a partner, oh, you have to do this and this and this. Never, never, never. I'm never doing that. They're the experts. For example, we're writing now our new multi-annual program for the next 5 years. We did it, we have a participatory approach. So we did like a workshop with all our partners together in Burundi. And yeah, that's the little things that we're doing to overcome this power balance and to do it better than we did before.
Also, but I could imagine also very specific to Globe Aroma. You have your challenges in that, and I just wondered, could you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a. Thank you for the question. I think we can't neglect all the asymmetries, but they come in many levels, in many forms, in many moments, and in some moments you can navigate them better than others because of also mental energy. But I see like 3 levels of asymmetries. There is systemic, there is organizational, and relational. The discrepancy between the systemic pressure and the relational pressure is immense. The operational or organizational is, I can go there first because that's the most easy, like easy, but difficult, easy. That goes, how does the organization, how can we use it as a tool? I think it was somehow related to what you were saying. We use it as an administrative tool for a lot of the artists. So there we use kind of the asymmetry of the institution and try to figure out how we can navigate gray zones or what can we learn around statuses, citizenship statuses and payment methods. How can we use this as an administrative tool? There an asymmetry is used in a tool. The systemic and the relational is more difficult. As an organization, you're continuously, definitely each organization, we are small scale compared to KVS, Africalia also, I think, but Tachatot, we are big scale to Tachatot. But we need to navigate this organization in such a polemic context that is insane. So you need to continuously make pragmatic choices in order to make this organization exist so we can keep on using it as a tool for artists. But the relational, like let's say, how we deal with this organization pressure amongst colleagues or with artists is super complex because everything or every pragmatic choice can be read in a way of gatekeeping, whereas it's sometimes, yeah, I make this choice because, or we make this collectively because this is also, somehow it needs to, it will remain or keep our organizational tool alive. So that is, it's difficult to navigate this.
Balance and navigate, yes. I will definitely get back to that. Gail, you are the co-founder of Tachot. Yes, I would like to hear your view. How do you see those power dynamics also relating to the artists you work with and organizations you work with?
I honestly think that it's very, like the power dynamics are always very clear when it comes to Tachatot's collaborations with any institution. First, when we struggle with papers and permits, when we struggle with finding jobs and having money for our collective and for us personally, when we don't have a space and when we are not registered. I think this is very clear that whenever we have any opportunity to collaborate with an institution, I think in this case you would know who has who's more powerful in this situation. I wouldn't know really. I wouldn't say I have solutions for it. It's rather very systematic, and it's. Yeah, that's it.
What changes, perhaps? What changes do you think are necessary? Because what I also thought was very interesting is that we also delved into the local art sector ourselves and the discrepancies and the power dynamics also when it comes to funding, when it comes to inclusion. There's a lot going on, and you can even say our local art sector is in crisis itself. So I just wondered on your thoughts. What do you see? What do you see as the necessary changes that that are to be made, enable for more balance, but perhaps even for more justice in this sense, for the artists you work for and for the local ecosystem? Are there any thoughts on that? Yes, please.
Yeah, from a perspective of the big theater, I think that our sector, my experience, is still very endogamic. Because we have more or less the same public coming to the same kind of things. We have to break it. We have to rethink some gatekeeping concept as quality. We have to involve for example, in Brussels, we have the 180 nationalities, the potential of the diasporas. We have to connect with them. They have to be the public. When we are programming, I don't know, Lia Rodriguez with people from the favelas in Brazil dancing, and you have nobody from Brazil. There is a lot of people living in Brussels, not only the people from the art sector and other people. You are not connecting that. You are bringing the stories, you are bringing something, and you are not connecting with the... I think that there is a big power there to increase the public. The public will give us more power, more support the diversity in the diversity of the narrative. And I think that one, and to use... to use the
diversity of the narrative, but can you explain that?
Yes, I think that all the words I was thinking about the narrative, because when you are thinking about war of violence, you are thinking about death and people. They are dying. I will talk about Argentina. 30,000 disappears. You are thinking about the people, the stories, but the real goal of this action is a narrative. You erase 30,000 people creating a narrative. And in the time we are thinking about Gaza at this moment, and we couldn't see other things than the people dying and the destruction. But the main goal is the narrative. Behind that is, I don't know the original name of Tel Aviv. I don't know anymore, because of the narrative. For me, this...
So you mean the narrative as a strategy?
Yeah, the narrative is the goal, and we are, the people, they think about arts or performing arts as we are now, a very technical and, I don't know, free time activity, but our main weapon is we create narrative. If you study the history from Europe 300-400 years ago, you read drama texts. You see, I don't know, Molière, Shakespeare, I don't know. We are in a position that we have to be aware of the power that we have created the narrative. And we are at this moment, a sector, the demand, the performative arts, the presence is something else. We are not only digital, we are coming together, telling stories, creating narratives.
Going back to what you think needs to be changed, I already had a few but interesting points, but concerning by this narrative, I can understand where you're coming from. At the same time, one of our first speakers, David Limaverde, spoke about the danger of romanticizing crisis, about the danger of the resilient artist. So I also feel a kind of a paradox in that narrative strategy, to build your case, to show the importance of art in crisis, but at the same time, do you also see the paradox or the danger in that?
And I'm agree with that. The last time I was thinking about resilience is something is a hype. Everybody has to be resilient and survive the crisis. I don't know. I think that we have to resist. We have to fight back. Not only to survive, to navigate the crisis, I don't know. There are a lot of ways to fight back. And it's, again, David told about peace. what peace means for some people, the fantasy of the life without conflict.
Magali, a constant, but I guess a constant reflection, or necessary but reflection, between what is necessary to survive as an organization, but at the same time knowing the change that needs to be made within your institutional framework. Is that, what do you see as those changes within your institutional framework, but in the sector, but as a whole, with what you've already had?
As a whole, okay. First of all, I wanted to maybe continue what Gerardo was saying. So we also have a program in Belgium. Here in Belgium, our program consists mainly of talking about artists, Afro-descent artists, and put them in the picture and get them in the rooms, get them in the theaters, get them on the screens. And there was another point I wanted to mention, but I lost it. I'm sorry. Yes, also thank you. Also with people from the diaspora, and I think it's really necessary to do that in order to continue to decolonize the sector.
To do what? Sorry.
To decolonize the sector. Yes, because what Gerard was saying is we always have the same public, mainly in the big art centers or in the big theaters. It's a wide, mainly
and
white public.
And do you believe that I can understand that those are very important steps, but also, and just to catch the name, but also our second speaker spoke about structural solutions. Also, it's been about power, it's been about agency. Who are leading our organizations? What are those structural fundings? Are those also changes that you think are necessary? What is your view on that?
Yes, I do think so. Yeah, I do think that's necessary to put other people on some spots.
I think perhaps even also, but what is your view? It's a very broad question. Changes in the local arts sector, and of course you are like an actor in the ecosystem. There's a specificness to your work. What do you encounter, and what are the changes that you think are necessary?
Yeah, when you use that word change, I think it's almost superficial to say, but we need to fight border violence. That's actually the main obstacle is even too small to use it. It's border violence that makes people stay in conditions that they're excluded from so many things that are part of life. So border violence that is related to administration, bureaucracy. So a lot of the artists that we're working with are dealing with all this border violent administrative bureaucracy, and it is crazy. It's really, you cannot work because you have such a citizenship status. You need to have that kind of paper. You get a no, you need to appeal once and twice and triple, and it's terrible and it's exhausting. And so I think we need to fight this way more, and not just like create a residency for an artist in displacement for a while. No, it's really like this needs to change. And I was referring to, we use our organization as an administrative tool. That's because so many cultural venues in Belgium don't want to pay our artists in a normal way. They might have a budget, but they don't dare to pay the artist because they're afraid the government will say something about the way they used to pay the artists. So that's why we at Globe Aroma, we try to pay all the artists, and we are continuously doing that work for these bigger institutions because they are afraid. But we are the organization that get all these kind of financial finances to check all our finances all the time. So that creates extra work.
So you mean no fair pay for artists in that sense?
It's not only the fair pay, because it's often, it might be fair, that is already something that we are growing towards too, but even that is a question. But it's really the actual payment. So not that many of the organizations pay the artists because they are afraid of the payment methods and to be facing all these administrative things, because indeed it's dealing with OCMW, CPS, and all these kind of things, and venues are afraid of it. And I think this needs to change next to border violence. But yeah.
How does this resonate to you and your work?
Yeah, I was thinking actually that I think it's and for me as a co-founder of a very small collective that has no funding, and I would say that I don't think I have an answer for how structurally they can change, like institutions. I don't even think it's my role to have a solution for this. But I think that what I would hope for is a bit of empathy, as you are saying, towards us and artists who have very specific situational hiccups or obstacles that need some empathy, and like people following up to see how can we do something with people, how can we help, how can we pay them, how can we, or like if I'm inviting someone to take into consideration, maybe this person does not have the transportation card, cannot, these very, very small things, and I think it's just the subtleties in taking care of the artists and the people that institutions want to support and be solid, like do solidarity with. I don't know the word. Yeah, thanks.
Good. And but interesting because we are now talking about the power structures within the ecosystem in itself, you know, also for focusing on institutions, other institutions, focusing on government. But I was also wondering, because you of course, how is the dynamics there? How is the collaboration between your organizations and other art organizations? What are the good things? What are the challenging things? Also perhaps, you know, also speaking about a sector which I also feel and see is a very competitive sector, because where everyone is fighting for the same resources, everyone is fighting their own battle. So I've named many things: a lack of resources, island mentalities. So within what I've just mentioned, how do you navigate and how do you collaborate with other art organizations here in Belgium? Magali?
Yes. I maybe have a very particular point of view, but it's from my point of view as a program manager for Africalia. Mainly in this, if we're working with all the other Belgian actors in international development, international cooperation, they're always like, okay, but you're in culture, and what are you doing then precisely? Because they're in agriculture, or they're in education, or they're in health. So they're always like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? So you always have to explain them, and also to our donor, like always you have to explain ourselves why it's important that we're there, why we're important that we're working on with artists in Sub-Saharan Africa, why it's important that we collaborate together. And then when they want to collaborate together, it's mostly for what we call C4D, Communication for Development. So what they do is like they want to instrumentalize culture to do sensibilization campaigns. They want to do our partners to make like a video for the sensibilization to use to vaccinate their babies, if that's the thing that they want to do. And then we're like, okay, yeah, but we can collaborate in other ways as well. So yeah.
In a way, a very colonial mindset. Can I put like a
yes.
very paternalistic?
Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah. And yeah, they're really like, what are you doing? And we don't understand. Yeah, so it's not always easy.
Yeah. And with organizations here.
Yeah, that's the same.
Yes,
it's the same. Except for the ones that are in culture, because we're very few here in Belgium, but there are some other organizations, and then we really try to be as complementary as possible, and to work together.
And how does it work for you?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it's not only collaborating with arts organizations, but I think it needs to be broader than that. If you think of displacement is not just a cultural issue. It's like we need to create ecosystems with organizations on housing, well-being. We try to do this small scale. It's not easy because all these organizations have different rhythms, also different urgencies. We used to collaborate in our organization with Pigment, who gives like social legal support. But they work really from a very urgency-based context, so they have a completely different tempo than the arts organizations. So a lot of arts organizations, there is something about the temporality that makes it sometimes complex to collaborate with. It works with deadlines, it works with production systems. They follow a certain timeline. And I think when, and that's something in collaborations that we often face, like these timelines are not always like aligned, not always from our organization with other arts organizations, but also from our arts organization with other social organizations or so on. So that is continuously something to think of, like, okay, what are our timelines and how can we, try to...
I think but that's a very interesting viewpoint. And do you feel that there is enough reflection or awareness of this matter within other art organizations? Is this a discussion that you have?
About the timeline or about the ecosystem that...
About the timeline and about the difference, but in that, and how that affects collaboration in a way.
Well, we have different kind of collaborations. We have some partners with whom we collaborate really on a long-term, more, I would say, like project-based, let's say the bigger institutions. And then there is like small collaborations that is rather for individual opportunities for artists. When it's individual opportunities for artists, you have sometimes more access to like a relation, to build up a relation, because you're like having a one-on-one conversation. With like a big scale collaborations, for instance, Kai Theater, maybe the collaboration started with like the artistic direction, but you also meet the production team, the technical team, the communication team, and not everybody approaches the collaboration in the same way, or thinks of, has the reflection about timelines. A technician thinks, you come in, you do this, you come with your technical writer, etc. But so yeah, this needs a lot of work in an institution as well.
Sure. But Gerardo, but how do you see this working within a large arts organization? How do you collaborate, and in which areas would you like to see more or better collaboration?
No, it's, yes, it's very different depending on the scale. With a big organization is something that somebody say, the way that we are working as in a kind of competition. Everybody speaks about to work together, but later when you have to write your plan, you have to show that you are unique and that you are doing something special. And at the same time, everybody is fighting for the premiere. I think it's a very...
timeline again.
Yes, no, it's something that I think is very patriarchal, like the purity, virginity. You have to have the first one. The second function is not good. That is also stupidity. It's the layer, but I say in the 10 years, I saw improvement in Brussels, that we are, with the big organization, we are working more and more together. But with the other organizations, I think it's very important what you said about the timeline. It's very, very important. And the second one is to try to be empathic about the context and not interpret that they are doing something against you. Sometimes you are like the machine working in a way, and they are working in another context, and because of that, you are not matching. But it's because the reality is another reality. When we are working with organizations from Africa, of Latin America, I don't know, sometimes they see us as in another way. We are a big opportunity. We are, again, about the narrative. to change the narrative. When we are working Europe with Africa, Latin America, Asia, it's a kind of idea of solidarity. Behind that, there is a layer of charity. And we are working in a way, I would like to change the narrative and to say that we are working in redistribution, because we are, every time, and the last time there was a wave of eco-morality to say that the people from Africa or Latin America, they don't have to travel because of the ecology of, I don't know, but the resources, they are traveling all the time. And somebody happening in, I don't know, in a mine, in somewhere, of in a forest, in somewhere, is paying some money from that is paying my salary. And now that I'm here to make a proposition for the government, that you said was one of the triggers, to say we have at this moment, it's a very crucial thing to produce tax shelter. It's money from the taxes that we can use, mediated to kind of to help people to pay less taxes, contributing with the art sector. But we can only use tax shelter with artists living in Belgium.
Exactly.
Maybe
Yeah.
if we can use tax shelter also with artists living somewhere else, okay, they are not paying taxes here, but in a way we are receiving we are having benefits.
So as an organization having a certain benefit.
Yes, as country.
Yeah.
Belgium, we don't have natural resources. We don't have gas, we don't have petrol, I don't know. It's coming from somewhere. We are selling things, we are receiving things, we are receiving a lot of things. Or maybe we have to think about international collaboration in the way that we think about a way of redistribution, not charity.
And also, but see that way also in the organizations that we work with. So it's about power.
Yes, if you change, and another thing is to put some colored people in the direction of a big organization, also coming with this kind of, maybe with another empathy with another regions, to change the way that the organization are working. And you know, when you are working in a kind of even administrative things, you are changing the reality. I'm very curious about the impact of the new Minister of Culture. It's more progressive, but you will see that in a couple of years, because now what we are having is the impact of the last minister, because they are doing things, they are changing administration, and administration is creating reality, because they are giving subsidies, everything. We have to put people in the spots where the rules are made to change the administration, to change the reality.
Yeah, thank you. Gail, we are speaking about in which areas would you like to see more collaboration between art organizations? What is your view on this? I can imagine that better collaboration could mean something else for your organization and the artists that you work with and for. What is your view?
I can tell you a bit how we collaborate. Perhaps it's better. So far we have met several institutions, like people who work in institutions and events, or we reach out to them, or they invite us, and whenever we meet, we discuss what Tashattut is capable of doing, and what our community is capable of doing, and what the artists that we know want to do. And then institutions sort of, I'm generalizing because they let us know that if there's anything specific that they would need us to fill, then they will contact us. And this is what happens normally. They let us know that this is, like there's this event, there's this concert, there's this exhibition, and if Tashattut would like to curate or invite an artist or fill the gap that is missing. So this is how we've functioned so far. The institution has, let's say, a budget, and they say that they can give us the certain budget to be able to distribute it amongst the artists that we invite.
Do you feel there is something also perhaps bittersweet about this? Because we just had a discussion about institution wanting to fill the gap or being performative.
Well, we do actually, it saddens us a bit sometimes to think that we are, as Sarah had said before, that we sometimes are tokenized, because we are Arab, because especially after October 7, we felt that we were needed to be able to fill, because we're not even Palestinian, we are Lebanese, but we are Arabs, so quickly invite the Arabs to curate something so that I'm not saying everyone did this, I'm not saying this at all, but we did notice that this is something that, and another thing, I think working with institutions in this way has made us really work in a very institutional way. We really have to focus on things that normally would maybe be more casual, would be nicer in a community. Rather, we are now focusing on the institutional way of how things function, on the paperwork, and this is pushing us away from our community, and we feel that this is why I was going to say at some point during the talk that this is why Tashattut will stop in the summer for a while at least, to figure out how to reassess how to continue, because it's been a lot of work for people who are not employed, who don't have papers, who cannot function in this system. And we wonder if we put ourselves in this system, or if we were dragged to become part of something that is more tokenized.
Exactly. So the system has more or less had a direct impact on your work, and means that you have to take a pause now to rethink.
To see how we can continue, and to talk with our community more, and see how we can grow the group and change the way we're working, because we've been working in a really, really structured way that has made us really, personally I would say that has taken a toll on mental health, on personal finances, on a lot of things, so yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Perhaps that brings us also to the last minutes, but perhaps also this brings me to the word of solidarity, and how we all see this, but in a way it's a very abstract term. That was also mentioned. What does it mean? What does it mean for our practice? So that's the question also I would like to start with. Perhaps starting with you. What does the word solidarity mean for you, and has meant for you in the work that you do, and especially the context now?
I appreciate whenever anyone or any institution or any entity is showing solidarity. I understand that it's something that people are still trying to understand how to go about. I agree with Sarah also before, during the keynote. If I can read some of the notes
Please.
that I wrote so that I don't invent, but symbolic solidarity. I agree that it's maybe something that is more present and aligning with the discourse. I'm quoting Sarah 100%, but I'm saying that aligning with the discourse, I think would show more solidarity rather than just doing something to fill an agenda or to. We have heard the sentence before. Somebody did actually say to us, we really want to check it off our list, so can you do an event for Palestine? This was something that was said to us, but not in a mean way. The people can be very nice when saying things, but they don't really understand what the weight of. So yeah, I would say everything that Sarah said, I would agree with.
Yes, I can imagine. Magali, solidarity, what does it mean to you in the context you work in?
I never use the word solidarity. I'm not a big fan of it.
Okay.
I prefer co-creation, collaboration, mutual partnerships, not as a theoretic aspect, but really in practice. Yeah, that's what it means. Like win-win partnerships. Like we both win. And
I like you challenging the word solidarity, and I don't want to make it into a semantic discussion, but you using the word collaboration, co-creation, at the same time, I can imagine, isn't there also like an uneasiness because a co-creation suggests that the power dynamics isn't there? So it's a word, but in practice, is it co-creation? Is it equal collaboration? Just challenging you there. No. But if you don't mind, what are your thoughts on that?
That's true. Yeah, it's in the context of international cooperation, it's never 100% co-creation because the power dynamics is still there. The power difference is still there. But even if it's already 90% co-creation, that's already a big step forward as well, I think, and better than solidarity.
The word solidarity, what does it mean, but in the context of your work and your and what you do as an organization and professional?
Well, I think what Gaël said earlier really touched the almost impossibility of solidarity work. The fact that Tachatot needs to take a break because they are forced to institutionalize or go with the lingo of institutions, yes, and therefore lose connection with community. I think it's actually insane. And I think as Globaroma we are also in that position, but already from a way more sustainable basis, I have to admit. But still, it's terrible what you said. Touched me. Also because we wrote together a few years ago a subvention dossier, Tachatot, at the VGC. And so Tachatot is like curators and programmers. They work with artists. So you have actually artists to be paid, but also the curators and the programmers. And so we knew that the funding body wouldn't agree with paying both. So we said from Globaroma, okay, we will pay the curators and the programmers. The funding is just for the artists. But then we got the message, but that's not your role as Globaroma to support curators and programmers. And then I thought, but how can new emerging initiatives then become sustainable? Like if only these three organizations get funding, but like initiatives like Tachatot or Liaison Collective cannot.
And what do you, because exactly, so because we also spoke about, seeing these power structures, seeing the way people and organizations are played against each other, and addressing this, but also being able to address it perhaps in a way that even hurts you. What are your challenges in that as Globaroma? Because you are an institution, perhaps not a very, very, very big institution, but still a voice in the field and significant enough, receiving, I guess, partly structural funding. How do you navigate also with other smaller grassroots organizations who are working with artist collectives? In this political field of little resources, everyone having to be able to fight, but for resources. What do you do with that?
So it is double fight. I read in your question, what do you do in this double fight?
Yes, exactly.
I think do the double fight. Like for instance, the specific fund. Immediately when we got the answer, I call it the contact person, and we went into a fight, unfortunately. But I don't know.
But what I especially mean is, I can imagine there is also a kind of but constraints, because on one hand, you can't bite the hand that feeds you, but they say, because it's a very political arena. So I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you navigate that political arena of perhaps I'm not sure, I am but assuming now, not being able to fight all the way, not being able to address certain issues, not being able to stick out your neck, because...
The thing is, I think that we do stick out our neck, but it's not so visible because we're also not so. So I think, I mean,
or are there other ways?
When you speak about now, I think you refer to the funding bodies. So how far can you stick out your neck in order to not? But
or how far can you organize solidarity? But how far can you organize amongst by themselves when seeing certain injustices?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, but it will. We can talk an hour about it. But I have the impression somehow in 2018, I think it was something happened in Globaroma. There was like a police invasion. That was very disruptive, and few people were taken to a detention center. And from that moment, Globaroma is really under controlled very closely by the FOD finances and social inspection and everything. So I think there are two possible reactions: or you lay low, or you just say what you do. Because they did already a very terrible thing. So what can be worse? But you need to think continuously. If we say what we do, how are we not bringing risk or danger to the community? So that is actually a continuous thinking. Like, how can we say what we do without bringing risk? How we do this, I don't know who are the people in the space.
But it's a constant strategy of choosing your battles, I hear more or less.
But trying to go as much with the trying to be very transparent about it. But work, on the other hand, extremely hard on what the government loves, finances, and how your governance system is. So that was an insane work to show how the legitimacy.
Very difficult position to be in, I can imagine. Gerardo, solidarity in the context of your work, what does it mean to you and to what you do?
Yes, different shapes because it's big, and we have different functions. For example, to create a big place. We have this venue. It's it's like a gym to practice, to create in a big space, and we try to create the environment for the makers to work in a quality long enough with resources. This is one fight, to put all the artists working with us, independent of the origin, giving them the same conditions to produce, to communicate. We make the same mistake for people, I don't know, mainstream people, new people coming from everywhere. This this kind of redistribution of the space to work in the big venues. We are one of the few big spaces. But the second one, more related to Proximamente maybe, is to make the space and to let, I don't know, different an ecosystem of people, a situation to create, to occupy the space, to reflect about the space, to even in the ownership of the things, something that we expect for an organization as a KVS, that you are always visible, that your logo is always big. Try to make the space to let other kind of organization of dynamic create a program, create an interaction, and to let them to create the impact, I think, from this position. And we have Proximamente, something that we started a little bit, but that we are sharing with artists and cultural workers from Latin America and now from other continents too, but also to give the space, I don't know, to your superpower is to be a curator when you are in the artistic team of such an institution. To let some other dynamics to curate and space, to give them the space and we are doing that, for example, with Congolización. It's a dynamic that we are giving them a space and funding, and they are curating a piece. I think this experiment to let other organizations work, being in the organization, they are teaching us another dynamics, our layers of organization, and to create a space and to make a redistribution of the funding that we have.
Yeah. And do you personally feel this is enough, or do you see loopholes for perhaps less structural solidarity, or less but symbolic, but solidarity once in a while? What is your own vision on this?
I don't think that is enough. I think that the solidarity, the redistribution actions, but I think that you have to. It's like an strategical thing. This we are in a position. We have a lot of friends, but a lot of enemies also in the politics that they don't like what we are doing, and they are expecting to see something that we can do and to erase us. It's like it is. And this, you have to respect the rules, you have to do things, and you can't change or take all the action that you want to do very, very fast. It's a question also of agenda, of a timeline, of a process, expectation. On the other side, when you start to do these kind of things, you get visible for the grassroots organization. You are more visible. You got more critics from the mainstream, also from the other organization. This is and at the same time you have to stay credible for the system in a way, because you are like an experiment. You say, okay, we are a Flemish theater, we are producing in Portuguese, in Arabic, in French, in Flemish, in English, This, you have to hold the space to let the artists to produce in the language that they want to produce and to tell the stories that they want to share with the world. It's another kind of things. This, we have to keep the ship going.
The legitimacy in that sense also, yeah, okay. Perhaps just a final question. We are ending the conversation. I would really like to thank you for opening up but in this way. And just perhaps more like a kind of a dream. So in a way, we have been talking about that collective solidarity in the arts field is needed now. It's urgent. We are in crisis in that sense in so many ways. If you could change things tomorrow or today, what would you want to change? What do you see as that vision of what should be different to be able to enable more collective solidarity in the art field? Perhaps that could be like a last thought, something you would like to share with us before ending the conversation. Who would like to, who already had something that immediately came into mind and would be like, this is it? It can be something small, it can be something big.
I'm looking at my colleagues and asking them if they have ideas. But they both said no, so...
So there is no hope for collective solidarity? Who wants to start? But Gerardo?
I think that the idea to create a kind of global tax shelter to help the people from the regions from where the resources are coming to the rich countries, to create a kind of, without the label of charity, to say, okay, it's part of our globality. We are global. We are selling our products in the world. We are taking the resources and we are producing the resources in our countries. It's giving us money. Okay, let us be honest. The world is global. This means that the benefit have to be global too. We are not doing charity.
A redistribution model.
Yes, the global tax shelter is the name.
Okay. any more of those ideas, Anne?
It's a dream. Huh? So I think it would be related to your question about the power dynamics and about related to what you were saying, Gael, about I call this a systemic pressure. So I would take away in my dream, the discrepancy between the systemic pressure and the relational pressure is solved.
Yeah.
Voilà.
Exactly. With one of your last examples. Yeah, exactly. Magali?
Yes, global recognition of the importance of culture for us humans and maybe what you were already saying, like open borders for everyone.
That too.
And not only south-north, but also south-south. Because what we're seeing, for example, with Africalia, when people from DRC want to travel to Morocco, they cannot because Morocco is not giving the visa as well. So everywhere.
Okay, thank you. One more shot?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Okay. Then I would like to thank you all for this beautiful conversation, and Magali, Gerardo, Gail, and thank you so much. Applause. Thank you, thank you.
Now we're going to go over to our lunch break. So we will have lunch for an hour, and we will start at 1:30 with the first part of the afternoon. My colleague Sophia told me that there was a mix-up on the locations for the second part, but if you go watch the signalizations around the building, there you see the right directions to the right rooms you have to be in. So have a nice break and yeah, voila, enjoy your meal.